Are you ready to learn? Because my super experienced guests are ready to share some really valuable information. Make sure and listen all the way to the end to get help and support. So let's start with the best audio experience.
Hello guys, welcome to our show. Today we discuss about very important topic because today if you wanna earn online, you need to pay a lot of attention to content rate optimization, CRO, and today we are going to cover about good CRO and bad CRO. It's very important. I know about that because you can get traffic, you can get engagement, but if you can't sell, it's useless. I'm so excited to discuss this topic with Johann. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. A good pleasure to get my show, to learn from you. I know about your experience. I check out on LinkedIn, many great stuff. So before we start, just tell more about yourself, experience, background, and why you decided to share it with us about good and bad CRO.
Well, I'll dive straight into a story from about 10 years ago, my own experience, my own life, my own professional practice that really got me thinking about this, and that really taught me a lesson that is with me to this day, and that I think of it quite often. And I was in a meeting with a client. This was the 6-month review after we were doing CRO with him, conversion rate optimization. The meeting started off very well. The CEO said, my conversion rate has definitely increased. My revenue has definitely increased. Here are the numbers, and I put it down to you. There's no question about that. And then from there, it was kind of downhill. And I thought, how can there be bad news? How having listened to that good introduction, what could be bad news after this? And the bad news was, and this CEO was on top of his numbers. He's a guy who manages his businesses by the numbers. And he pointed out that all of those things were true. The conversion rate was up, revenue was up, but he'd identified that it was the wrong segment of his target market. So what we managed to do in that 6 months was to increase the conversion rate from a segment of his audience that were worth less to him. They purchased less frequently. When they purchased, they spent less. And so in the long run, that LTV, that lifetime value, just didn't make sense. And why that was important in the short term is the warehouse, the people in the warehouse were now busier than ever. They were putting stuff into envelopes and sending it out to clients. But that means postage costs and courier costs are going up for the same or a little bit more revenue. And, the lesson to me there was, if you are going to be pulling levers, you can optimize the site, you can optimize the journey, you can achieve great results until the cows come home. If it's not results that your stakeholders, your senior stakeholders care about, it doesn't matter. And so I'm sure we get back into that, but that was kind of a core lesson that to this day, one of the first things we do is you make sure you understand what are the overall objectives of the business and how do you map back to that.
Nice. Yeah, awesome. I found that you are a co-author of the book E-commerce Website Optimization. I love reading books. It's my passion. I remember when I overwatched TV, I changed this bad habit to reading books. Today, I can spend all my free time by reading books. And, it's interesting that I found that many business books are great for sleep. When you have the problem with sleep, you can take a new book, to read a little bit and sleep well all night. You don't need to pay for medicine, pills, so time saving. But, some books, business books are great. I can read them like, I don't know, for example, I love Jack London. He wrote his books 100 years ago. When I read any of his book, I can feel that I'm the part of the journey. I can forget about sleep. I can forget about water, meal, anything, because I'm on this book, on this adventure. But some great business books, for example, Joe Sugarman wrote a book about marketing, about retaining audience 40 years ago. I love it. I can read this book and feel all these valuable insights. Can you give me and my audience a solid reason to read your book? What kind of benefits we can get by reading your book, and why it's important today to get these valuable insights?
Well, Anatoly, one of the most amazing things, we all, I think this is universal. Everyone struggles with imposter syndrome. And when you put yourself out there in a book, you're your own worst critic. So it's always surprising to me when I hear readers contacting me and commenting on the book. And, I had somebody say to me, they sleep with a book next to their bed kind of thing. And so what I hear from readers is what I will tell you, which is that they tell me it is a very practical guide. A few people actually has used the word Bible. They talk about using it as their CRO Bible. It is very practical. It's full of frameworks, and it's full of hard-won lessons, hard-won knowledge. That 10 years of experience that's dumped into that book, and there's it's quite varied. It's got a lot of different subtopics in there. I would say the one major lesson, and it comes back actually to today's topic, is, and by the way, I should say that I'm not here to say to anyone you're doing CRO wrong. There's a lot of that you'll find on social media. Leave that for social media. That's kind of shallow, with context matters. It's impossible for me to pass judgment on the way anyone is doing CRO without understanding the context. But there's some sort of fundamental principles that you can distill from looking at hundreds of CRO programs over the years and talking to peers in the industry who've done similar things. And a core one for me, and this comes through in the book hopefully as well, is that the kernel of CRO for me is understanding the world of your customers. That's where it all starts. And you can look at GA, Google Analytics, and Hotjar and all this. We like this, all these metrics and the graphs, the beautiful visual stuff. But we forget that all of that really is a reflection of human behavior. It is your conversion rate is the result of somebody buying or not buying, somebody clicking a button or not clicking a button. And you cannot change conversion rate. It is what it is. When you look at conversion rate, you're looking in the rearview mirror. It's already there. If you want to change it, you have to change the human behavior that drives the result. And in order to change human behavior, you've got to understand human behavior. In order to understand human behavior, you've got to get into the mind of your users, into the mind of your customers. So you've got to understand the world of your customers. And hopefully the book helps with that. It's A, to understand that, to understand the value of that, and B, to get the guidance and the practical know-how, how to do that.
Nice, awesome. Okay, guys, you can find the link to this book in the description. I'm going to put this book on my list. I have a huge list of books that I need to read, and definitely I'm going to do it. And I have the next question about, you mentioned that you need to understand the customer. And I see when companies usually analyze competitors, they see how they create landing pages, how they create content, replicate them. But, all products have their unique selling proposition. They have some strong sides. Competitors usually highlight their strong sides. So if you replicate, you can replicate strong sides of your competitors, and sometimes it's a not good idea. And I think the era of lazy marketers is that you can't just analyze competitors and replicate them, but you need to understand, as you mentioned, your customers. You need to learn why your customers change their hard-earned money with your products. Can you tell how to learn customers, how to understand what kind of benefits, insights they need to get?
Well, just to touch on that, the first thing you said about competitive landscape and looking at the competitors, Anatoly, I think that's such an important point. And it's, if you wanted to have a a table, a column that says good CRO and one for bad CRO. I don't want to oversimplify like that, but copying the competitors would definitely be in the bad CRO column. And that happens far more often than you'd imagine. And I see it in very sophisticated organizations. The funny thing about that is it seems to me from 15 years of doing this and working with clients in big organizations and small as well, everyone's copying their competitors. Everyone's copying each other. And you have no idea whether something is working on their site and whether it's relevant to your customers. Even within the same, I think the story that I told you right at the top of this call illustrated that this client of mine, and I discovered it too late, but there were two segments in his business that behaved very differently and that were worth completely different amounts to him in terms of monetary value and LTV. So not only do we have different customers as different businesses, but within our own business, we serve different customers. And the only way you can really do this is, as I said at the beginning, is understand, one, what are your customers trying to get done? Now, the reason I come to you, your website, as a customer, and the reason I buy from you as opposed to your competitor or one of your competitors, there's a very good reason for that. I might not even know the reason for that, because that's often a subconscious decision. 95% of purchase decisions are made subconsciously. We post-rationalize it with our thinking brain, but it's made on autopilot. So when you ask a customer, why did you buy from me? Why did you buy from the competitor? They'll give you an answer. They probably don't know. You've got to, and there are a couple of techniques that you can use to kind of hone in on that, to walk away with those insights. So in CRO, very common, you'll find usability testing, but that really gives you insight about the on-page behavior, like where are the points of friction. It's really valuable. Then you get surveys. The surveys are great, on-site or email surveys. They're great because it's a mass amount of information and you can get, a lot of data around very specific topics. For me, the most underrated source of insight, or I should say one of the most underrated, is customer interviews, is phoning up customers and speaking to them for 20 minutes and understanding. For me, it's less important to have a list of questions to ask. And it's more important to have a list of sort of things to listen out for. So the things that I want to listen out for when I speak to customers is, when you bought from me, what were you trying to get done? What is it? What is that problem that you're trying to solve without using that language? Number two, what other alternatives did you consider? And I have to remind you, these aren't questions I ask. These are things that I listen out for. Number three, why did you make the decision one way or the other? What are the kind of things that go wrong? What are the problems that you experience when you're trying to solve that problem that you're trying to solve? Customers are really good at talking about what it is that they're trying to get done and what goes wrong in trying to do it. And they're less good at solving the problems. They're less good at telling you, well, I think you should do A, B, and C on your website. That's not their job. That's your job.
Yeah. I think my son can take some decisions 100% subconsciously, without any logic. Just okay, I want the sneakers. Please buy me the sneakers. And why? Just tell me why. You have 5 other pairs. No, I want the sneaker because it's very important. You don't understand. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. I'm interested about, for example, I found that companies pay so much attention to acquire new traffic, but sometimes you can double sales with existing traffic. Can you tell how to analyze that? Because for example, we have web traffic, we have clients, we have content, but I found that it's much smarter to spend time to think how you can double sales, because acquiring new customers costs 5 times more than retaining existing ones, and you can sell to your customers more because they are loyal, they know about your products. Can you tell insights how to find the right way to double or even just to increase sales with existing customers?
Yeah, I mean, to double, it's I couldn't give you that answer. I think some businesses are easily able to double their sales. There's people are perhaps crawling over broken glass. I think that's rare. In today's world, certainly 15, 20 years ago, that may have been possible. Today, when everyone is on Shopify and using very well established best practice, I hesitate to use that term, but I think it's far more difficult to double sales, but certainly it's possible, and certainly it's not only possible, but everyone who does CRO will know this from experience, that to increase sales, the CRO big picture is not in one big movement to have a massive increase. It is marginal gains, right? So it's 5% here, 7% there, 3% there, and when you string that all together, you've got a significant uplift. But it's generally small gains, and you'll find case studies on the internet that talk about 300% increase in conversion rate from one button test and so on. That's bullshit. That's when it sounds too good to be true. It is too good to be true. We've seen significant increases from a single test. Whenever we see that, it's a red flag. It triggers a process to go and find the error. If we see a test that delivers massive results, double digits, high in the double digits, there's probably something wrong. And more often than not, when we try to find that error, that there is an error. So, you've got to, and again, that would be an example of, in column B, bad CROs, just kind of accepting all these too good to be true numbers for what they are at face value. But there's another angle to this that I want to bring in here, Anatoly, which is wins are really important. And, by win, I mean a winning test, right? So you tested A versus B. A is the original, B is your idea, and it produced an uplift in conversion rate or AOV or revenue, whatever you're measuring. So that's great. You can now deploy it live, and you've got a better experience. But equally valuable is a negative test for a number of reasons. Number one, you didn't hurt sales or conversion rate by making that thing live. You've tested it, and by testing, you get to weed out all the things that would otherwise hurt your sales, and you keep only the winners. Number two, you don't waste your developers' time working on stuff that don't move the needle. Number three, you're able to discover levers that you've got a negative test. That means it's a lever. You've pulled it in the wrong direction. All you need to figure out is how to pull it in the right direction. I've seen this many, many times, that some of the biggest wins and some of the most impressive wins started out as losing tests, as negative tests. And the reason for that is there is no other way we could have stumbled upon that insight. What we learned from that losing test, you test an hypothesis, you believe. Hypothesis basically is, we believe X will lead to Y. Now we test it. It turns out X doesn't lead to Y. Okay, what does that teach us? What do we learn from this? We're surprised. We've pulled the lever in the wrong direction. And, it becomes that process of iteration. So I would add another tick to the list of bad CRO, and that would be to obsess over wins without valuing the total value from running A/B tests and experimentation.
Yeah. By the way, I think it's hard to call something negative test, because any test can provide insights, what to change, how to adapt, how to make some difference. I don't know. So yeah, that's why we test. I remember Elon Musk told that if you don't make mistakes, you're not innovative enough. So sometimes we need to test, as you mentioned, to test and find some insights that will work for you. I want to get back a little bit to content strategy. I had a client who told me he lost a lot of traffic, like 400,000 traffic, but he didn't lose sales. So he had a lot of traffic, huge traffic, but this traffic didn't sell anything. Can you tell how to create the right strategy today? Because what I see, for example, people chase high volume. For example, even if I get SEO in the top 10 results, it doesn't mean that I can sell SEO services, because it's the keyword for big SEO companies, even hard to overcome them, so hard. But even if I can find the way or resources to do it, what's the goal? I can't sell with this keyword. And I see the same problem when webmasters chase high volume keywords or keywords that don't sell their products. Can you tell how to create a strategy that will cover a buying persona?
Yeah, I mean, this is a classic vanity metric, isn't it? Numbers of sessions, numbers of visitors on a page. I mean, I'm not an SEO expert. That's more your area. What I would say is that this illustrates why it's so important for CRO and SEO to work together. CRO, SEO, paid, social, all these different silos to work together. That's true for organizations. And it's also true when it's outsourced to agencies or outsourced to individual contractors. Get those contractors, get those agencies to work together. Force them on the same call. Do it on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, whatever it needs to be. But get those people. So Anatoly, when you and I work together on a client, this is a topic that we discuss, and we would share insights with each other. And your expertise is in developing a strategy, an SEO strategy, targeting those various layers of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, top of the funnel, middle of the funnel. My expertise is in taking that traffic when it lands on the site and making the best of it. For each of those segments, there's going to be a different strategy. There's going to be a different, maybe even a different landing page if it's warranted. But it starts with, you use the word personas. Personas has got a bit of a bad rep over the last few years, but whatever you want to call them, personas, or there are various names for them, but it's incredibly important to be able to put your finger on who that segment is, and treat each of them differently. So and this, I don't think this is necessarily low-hanging fruit. I think this is, you kind of evolve into that. But certainly, I've seen this many times, and there's a client that I work with that recently, similar story to you, they spent hundreds of thousands on television advertising. And so you saw traffic shooting through the roof, and conversion rate actually going down. And there's this inverse relationship between traffic and conversion rate. And the reason for that, the site's still converting at the baseline. Nothing has changed. The only thing that's changed is they've now acquired a lot of top of the funnel users, and people that are kicking the tires, and people that are looking around, and maybe in 6 months from now, or maybe, it's an awareness piece. So another typical one, and this is the last example I'll mention, but what we often see with e-commerce, for example, is how the blog works with the selling site. So you've got a blog that is good at attracting customers into the ecosystem. And it's very unlikely for those customers or those users, those visitors who land on the blog that's just discovered your brand today, it's very unlikely for them to convert in the same session, or, even in the same sort of period. It's an awareness driver, and you've got to take a longer term approach with it. You can't expect that they're going to behave in the same way. But I think the bottom line is for the different specialists to work together, because they really bring those different skill sets. But this is a very important conversation to be had.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree, because, by the way, if you open LinkedIn, you can check out requirements in job sections. Many companies are looking for jack of all trades who can do anything, So when I check out these requirements, you can see We are looking for someone who can create the strategy, find keywords, link building, content creation, CRO, website development, design. Guys, to do it, jack of all trades, master of none. We know about that. So,
and I tell you that, I mean, that's crazy. I see the same thing. So I've been doing this for 15 years, and I still learn every day, and every day I discover how much there is that I didn't know, how much there is that I still don't know, that I still have to after 15 years. And I'm not even talking there about new developments. Of course, there's that as well. It's just sort of unknown unknowns. Now, if you take just CRO as a discipline, then within CRO, there are various sort of sub-disciplines, specialisms. And it's impossible for one individual to be fully on top of each of those specialisms, let alone different sort of adjacent disciplines, CRO, social, SEO, all these things. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about another aspect that I can see. It's about simplicity. For example, I found that many websites can replicate, I don't know, like Amazon content, but Amazon can sell 1 billion products, a lot of products, and customers know the Amazon structure. They know the website. They know how to find important information. If you sell to new customers, sometimes it's a not good idea. And I like more Apple. No, when you open apple.com, you can see only iPhone. That's it. Nothing. Apple can list MacBook, AirPods, many other items, but Apple only sells iPhone in the first visible screen because because iPhone is responsible for 50% of all sales. So they list best-selling product. And I remember Bill Gates once replied to this question. For example, if you have a product A and product B, you can invest X amount of money to product A and product B. If product B will sell 2 times more, the next time Bill Gates will invest all money to product B because he knows that it's better to sell product B than anything else. So can you tell about simplicity? Because many webmasters usually list a lot of products on homepage, all their items, catalog, but customers hate it. They don't like when you are trying to sell anyone, and it might confuse. You open and you don't know what to click, or what to learn, how to choose. But sometimes we need it, like in catalog pages when customers need choices to choose between them. Can you tell how to find the balance between simplicity and sharing important insights?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question. So there are a couple of things there. So let's talk about simplicity first. And here are a couple of sort of general rules of thumb. And I always, what works for me doesn't work for you, and the other way around. So we've got to remind ourselves of that caveat whenever we talk about these rules of thumb and best practices. But there's certain principles that are well established, and the one is the paradox of choice, right? So Barry Schwartz, I think it was, who wrote a great book about this. You spoke about good books earlier. There's one for the list. Studies that have been done that talk about how the more choice you put in front of consumers, the less likely they are to make that choice. And so it actually kind of backfires at you. And, we've run many tests where we've seen this, where we've seen the effect of that. And the more you take away, the more you simplify, to use your word, the page, the journey, the sales conversation. So the more you remove from it, the more clarity there is, the more attention you draw to what remains behind. There's another great book, Brain Cells, by Dr. David Lewis. Dr. David Lewis is a scientist based in the UK who studies the brain and what happens in the brain when people buy stuff, when they make purchase decisions. And I once asked him to name one thing, just one thing on the internet specifically, that if from all these years of experience and studies, if he had to single out one thing that is likely to improve conversions and sales online, and he said it would be to improve the flow, and what's meant by that is, I spoke about those decisions being made on autopilot. So removing stuff out of the way of the user, out of the customer, not taking away things that'll make them think, taking away things that'll make them have to consider between two different choices. The less of that there is, the more likely it is for that decision to be made. And whether the decision is yes, I'm going to buy, or no, I'm not going to buy, it's you want to drive towards that decision. What you don't want is indecision. If you land on my e-commerce site or my website and you're not my right target customer, I'm more than happy for you to purchase at Amazon. If I'm selling a premium product and you buying on price and you can get it cheaper from Amazon, that's right. Amazon is the right place for you. But I've got to be able to convey the value of buying from me. And we've done very interesting tests like this. So we work with pretty big brands that compete head on with Amazon. And often, I spoke about customer interviews earlier. One of the questions we'd often explore is, what makes you buy from this brand directly as opposed to Amazon, where you can get it cheaper and you get a free delivery and next day and all the rest, and you're part of that ecosystem already. It's such a strong brand loyalty. And then equally asking people, why did you decide not to buy from the brand directly? And then, if you understand that and you can build that into your message. Something I should say quickly, Anatoly, is a big part. You touched on this earlier as well, but for me, there's a temptation to look at a website as a flat structure or an app. It's a two-dimensional thing with text and images and buttons, calls to action, hierarchy of information, and so on. And then if that's your mental model, then what you're doing is you're moving stuff around the page and optimizing the page. Far more powerful. And it goes back to what I said earlier about getting into the mind of the user, because you want to shift behavior, and the result of that is driving metrics that are of interest to you, is optimizing the sales conversation. When I land on your website, I'm there for a reason. I want to buy whatever it is that you have, or I'm looking for a solution, and maybe yours is the right solution, maybe it's not. I'd better find that out quickly. But if there's a chance that yours is the right solution for me, you want to communicate that very quickly, and you want to communicate that very clearly. And then I've got questions, I've got thoughts, I've got doubts, I've got fears, I've got concerns. You want to address those things. So it's not about moving stuff around the page. It's about moving stuff around in the decision, in the mind, in the understanding what happens in the buying brain, and optimizing that. Really, that's for me far more powerful than moving stuff around the page.
Nice. Awesome. Love it. Yeah. I know many brands compete with big competitors, big websites that have loyal audience, and it's hard, but possible. If you understand why customers don't want to buy from big brands, think how you can adapt to your unique selling proposition. Okay, I have the question about mistakes. Can you list common mistakes that companies still do with optimizing, with conversion rate optimization, and how to find a much better way?
Well, I think two of them I have to list, and I've kind of alluded to them both before. And the one is that obsession with wins. So we covered that, but I think that's a big one. The other one we've also touched on, which is throwing spaghetti at the roof. So it's testing for the sake of testing. Now, A/B testing is not equal to CRO, and CRO is not equal to A/B testing, right? So CRO includes A/B testing, but it includes a whole lot of other things. So it's, for every test, there's an opportunity cost with every test you run, because in its place, you could have been running another test, and you want to make sure that you maximize that opportunity, and that you're running things that have the best chance of giving you a result, whether it's positive or negative, as we spoke about earlier. And you've got to justify why it's on the roadmap. So how does it tie back to your overall objectives? So that's quite a common mistake. Another one that's often made is this is a two-edged sword, and it has to do with statistics. And I want to be careful about how I talk to that, because it's such a deep topic, and it'll hurt your head very quickly. But I think there is, if you're gonna be doing A/B testing, and you should, then you've got to, as far as possible, adhere to the rules of statistics. It's governed by the laws of statistics. And in basic terms, really, it doesn't have to be any more complex than this, is don't run a test and conclude it after a day or two or even a week when you've got crazy numbers and it tells you you've just made 20% extra on conversion rate, but actually the sample size is too small. You've not allowed enough traffic to come through to it. So that's the one side of this double-edged sword, is not observing those laws of statistics and in very simple language, running tests where there isn't enough traffic. The other side of it is obsessing over statistics when really, the CEO or the owner or the senior stakeholder really doesn't care about statistical significance and p-values and Bayesian chance to be best and all of that. They care about making a good decision, and sometimes you're going to get it wrong, and sometimes that's part of it. Statistics it makes provision for that. So it's whilst you observe those laws, you don't over fixate, you don't over index on it, unless you're in a big organization where it's part of a very mature and most of the clients we'd work with, that would be the situation. But if you're starting out, and if you're not there yet, if you're running your own show, then I'd say what you're trying to do is you're not trying to find a cure for malaria or some big disease. You're trying to make a better decision, and it's about reducing risk. Those would be some that come to the top of my head.
Yeah. Agree. I remember when Mark Zuckerberg shares about risk. The biggest risk is not to take risk. So sometimes we need to test to make a risk. And I have the final question. Let's imagine you started from scratch without any experience, knowledge, skills. You didn't write a book. What will you do today to learn more about CRO?
There's so much out there today. There's so much information. When I started, there was nothing. There were no courses. There was, the name didn't exist. So you had to figure this stuff out. Right now, you follow the right people on LinkedIn, you follow the right people on Twitter, you will get really good, on a daily basis. You'd get from thought leaders, people who are at the top of their game, free advice, the kind of stuff that, that they charge their clients for. You follow me, you follow my peers, you go on YouTube. There's a lot out there that's for free. Now, we're not even talking yet about courses and stuff you can pay for. CXL is a great forum for this. There are other courses as well. There are books. The most important thing really is to actually do it. Whatever it is that you learn. This applies to anything. Like you, I'm an avid reader. I read a lot. And what I consciously try and do, don't always succeed, but the books that you remember, the stuff that you learn that gets internalized, it's those things that you practice, that you've read something and now you do it. And so that would be my advice to you, is whichever route you follow, whether it's YouTube or LinkedIn, probably a combination of these things, make sure you get to play with it. And then last thing I'll say on that, one of the best ways to learn would be to work with an agency. In my agency, that wouldn't be an option. We only work with people who've got experience, but many agencies will hire people who are new in the game, and they'll train you up. And what's so great about that is you get exposure to many different sectors, many different clients. You get to learn from your colleagues, and that would be my advice.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think over learning can hurt more than help because I can read 100 books how to play soccer, but if I don't play, how I can beat great players? It's not like to beat Leo Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo. It's more even mediocre players because soccer players prefer to hit a ball 1,000 times a day than to read 100 books, how to play soccer. And that's why I love learning, but most of my time I spend by doing. When you implement, you can, for example, Bill Gates, when he reads books, he usually makes notes and thinks how he can implement it. Okay, he can read more books, but he stops, making notes, and think, okay, interesting insight. So how I can implement all this information? So that's why I'm not. By the way, I met a few people who overlearned. Uh, I'm not sure it's a good idea because you can get all skills without implementation. It costs nothing, even more. People have short memory. They can forget for a few days about new skills. I can forget for a few hours. Just give me some insights. I can forget because without implementation, it's hard to go ahead. I completely agree. Johann, it's a big pleasure to get my show, to learn from you. Tell our audience the best way how to reach out to you, how to learn more about you, how to follow you.
The best way to get hold of me is via social. So I'm very active on Twitter, active on LinkedIn. Look me up there. And my agency, awa-digital.com. You can find me there as well.
Okay, guys, you can find the link to the agency, to LinkedIn profile, to Twitter profile in the description below. List Johann book because you can get a lot more valuable insights. And it's not about to learn from Johann. Implement his ideas, then you can get all these results. Okay, guys, love you. See you.
It's been great.